Hello everyone, my name is Travis Cronin. I'm an assistant professor from the Department of Social Work Education, and I'm here today to talk to you about goal setting and why it's important. You don't need a goal for everything. You need a goal for things, I think, for things that would be hard to achieve if you didn't have a goal. For example, I like to eat ice cream, and I don't need to set goals about eating ice cream. It's something that happens without setting goals. So the type of goal setting that I'm talking about is the ability to figure out what's hard that I'm capable of doing, but I wouldn't otherwise do without a goal. When I was younger, I had an opportunity to meet someone who had played in the NFL, and that was very impressive for me that they had played professional football. And in that process, the person said that the difference between a goal and a dream is that a goal is something that you write down and work towards, whereas a dream is something that you simply think about. For me, that was an important distinction. That was a helpful sort of way to think about the difference between these things. I grew up learning about SMART goals, which is a mnemonic or a acronym to help people remember that the steps or important aspects of goal setting. I've developed something called Toaster. It's slightly different, but it's in essence a similar sort of tool to help think about the way that we think about goals. So the first thing, if you were in a classroom and we were sitting here having a conversation, I would ask you, how are goals like a toaster? And I've done this a few times, and people have said, well, you know, a toaster helps change bread to toast, right? It takes it from one state and changes it into another. I think this makes this an apt metaphor. This toaster, this is actually a picture of my toaster at home, unplugged it, took a picture of it this morning. But you'll notice that, that this toaster is not plugged in. Without the power, without electricity, this toaster doesn't do what it's designed to do. And my argument for this mini lecture is just to help you to see that the things that you're capable of require that you're connected to the things you need to be connected to in order to achieve what you're capable of or designed to do. So one other element that has been pointed out as I've had these types of conversations with people is that there's a dial, and that dial is designed to help you dictate how crunchy or soft you like your toast. If you just like it warmed, or if you like it extra crunchy, then you set the dial in a particular way, and you need to actually put pressure on that dial or the lever in order to get the bread to lower down and become toast. So that was my thinking when I developed this mnemonic. So the first letter in toaster stands for timely. Is this the right time for a goal, or for the specific goal that you're interested in achieving? When I was in college for the first time as a two-year school, and I was very nervous about it, and so I went out of my way to take the classes that I thought I was most likely to pass first. I took those classes, did pretty well, but then as the semesters started to come, it became more hard because I had procrastinated or put off certain courses that I was nervous about. And so I'm starting my sophomore year, and things are getting kind of difficult for me. I remember specifically I was really nervous about the intermediate algebra class that I had to take, and I'd get so nervous during the exams that I would sweat and I would feel very anxious. And I realized at that point that I needed an explicit goal to get through college. If I didn't set a specific goal, I wouldn't ever graduate from college. And so for me, I first needed to set a goal, a timely goal, of getting an associate's degree before I could really think about getting a bachelor's. I certainly wasn't thinking about graduate school when I first started college. So my encouragement to you is to sort of evaluate whether or not this is the right time for the goal that you're setting. The next piece is that a goal should be observable. The easiest way to see if something's observable is to count it, right? You want one associate's degree, or you want 15 credits, and you want to make sure that you get a 3.0. Things that you can figure out, either they happened or they didn't. If you lack this element, it's pretty hard to determine whether or not the goal has been achieved, and so it's pretty important. Next, we want to know if it's reasonable. You can't tell from this video, but I'm 5'6", and I at one point thought it would be fun to play in the NBA. That was not an achievable goal. There's only one person shorter than me who has played in the NBA, and I was not nearly as hardworking as Muggsy Bogues, and certainly didn't have the talent level that he had. So you always want to consider if something's achievable. When I was first starting college, if someone said to me, "You're capable of becoming a doctor," or "You are capable of going to graduate school," I would not have believed them, and it wouldn't be an achievable goal for me at that time. Sustainable. Not every goal needs to be sustained forever. In my particular case, I needed to sustain my attention to my college studies for long enough to get through a semester, and then to register for the next, and to continue. And so I needed to set a goal that was sustainable over time. Once my associates was done, I didn't need to go back and re-study that material. I needed to study the next material that was available in order to leverage a bachelor's degree. I finished my bachelor's degree and went to work. Wanted to come back to college, sustained that for 2 years, got a master's degree. So something that's sustainable is something that you can keep up over time, that makes the goal worth achieving. This is, if there were any element that just can't be neglected in all of your goal setting, I'm going to pay attention to this specific element, that it's tracked. About 11 years ago, I'd graduated with my master's degree, and I thought that I wanted to go on and get a PhD, but I wasn't doing it. I wasn't applying for programs. I wasn't taking the GRE. I wasn't doing the things that I needed to do, and I'd already been out of school for a couple of years. So what was the problem? I knew that I needed to write down some explicit steps that would allow me to achieve my goal of going into a PhD program. For me, the first goal that I needed to set was schedule the GRE. It's an exam that you've got to take, similar to the ACT or the SAT. There was no program that I found that was going to admit me without this exam, so I needed to schedule it. Some people would think, well, you should go buy a study book, or you should study for the exam first. For me, I needed to schedule the exam, and then I was motivated to study. I knew how much time I had. So then I went to a bookstore, got a prep book, started preparing, took the GRE. Fast forward, I kept track of my goals from that point till today. In that particular instance, I took the GRE, applied to one school, got rejected by one school, didn't go to a PhD program. A few years later, a few friends of mine had gotten into doctoral level studies, and I paid attention to what they did. They applied to multiple schools. Without exception, all of my friends who got into doctoral level programs applied at multiple schools. And so this time, I applied to 5 schools, got into 2, and I had to retake the GRE a second time, right? So there's extra steps that I had to take, but I kept track of them. For me, I said I put it up on my ceiling when I won my associate's degree. I put up a piece of paper that said, "Get an associate's degree." I'd look at it every night. 11 years ago, when I started this process, I put a piece of paper by my bed where I'd look at every single night, and I had a set of things that I wanted to accomplish. When I accomplished them, I would put a little check mark by those things that had been achieved, and at the end of the year, I could evaluate. In my case, I never wanted to achieve all of the goals that I set at the beginning of a year. It's probably in the range of 60 to 70%. So I set goals that are going to push me, and that even if I pushed as hard as I was capable, I still wouldn't get to 100%. So somewhere in that 60 to 80% range of success, I think, is an ideal place. But you want to track it. You want to make sure it's observable. Now here's a new element, and I think this is really important. So when you think about that toaster, that dial that you have to make adjustments, you may not get your perfect piece of toast the first time you use that toaster. You're likely going to go through multiple pieces of bread and multiple iterations of how you like toast on that toaster before you figure out how to leverage the toast that you want. That's the same thing with education. It's the same thing with personal goals or ways that you want to be in the world. And so you have to be able to make adjustments over time. This is what Darwin meant by evolution, right? That there was adjustments or adaptations that people made over time that allowed them to achieve the things that they wanted to achieve. That this goal-directed behavior is uniquely part of our experience as human beings. And there's one last element for me that I think is essential to this. It's about revolutions. It's about going after something with enough energy to know that you've sort of pushed yourself hard enough. Is this what you're capable of? Are you capable of more? How do you find ways to push yourself to the next level and achieve the things that you're capable of achieving? So just as a final example, I'll just give an example. When I talked about my PhD, for me, I needed to schedule GRE. And then I needed to study for the GRE. And after I've studied for the GRE, I needed to take the GRE. Then I needed to apply to multiple PhD programs. And once I'd been accepted, then I needed to go to school. So I could put this on a board, right? I could put this on a piece of paper. And so, okay, yeah, I've scheduled the GRE. That's something that any one of you watching this could do, right? And any one of you could study for the GRE. And any one of you could take the GRE. But the key point for me was I needed this score to leverage me a spot in this program, right? I needed someone to accept me. I had to perform at a certain level. And so I needed, in terms of timing, I needed to be done with my bachelor's degree. I needed to be in a place where I was really ready. And once I had taken the GRE under those circumstances, 2 years post master's program and then 5 years post retaking it, I performed better. Then I applied to multiple programs, and that finally allowed me to go to school. The last thing I'll say is that sometimes when we achieve goals, when we've really pushed ourselves past the place where we think we can go, we sometimes surprise ourselves. So for example, I'd finally leveraged a spot in this PhD program, and I sat around the table with my 5 classmates. And I looked around, and my immediate thought was that these 5 people are probably super intelligent, and I just snuck in, right? I did something to trick them. I was the person who barely figured out how to get an associate's degree, and then I barely, right? At each step, I felt like I was really having to work towards something. As I got to know these people, I learned that they felt similarly, right? They felt like they too were imposters. But that's the key point, right? Is that by setting goals, you can surprise yourself. You can achieve things that you didn't think you were capable of achieving. And that by identifying where you want to be today, next week, next month, 3 months from now, a year from now, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, those things will adjust. That's part of the evolutionary process. But revolutionary means that you're willing to set that goal in the first place, that you're willing to take that step. Thank you for joining me. I wish you luck as you set and achieve goals for yourself.